in the list too. But let's start it off with Callan. He says, good afternoon, gents. I went to all 3 games against Houston. That definitely had the high drama and tension of a playoff series. You could cut that tension with a knife, especially on Tuesday night.
Can you imagine the electricity, a home playoff game, if it involved the Dodgers in San Diego? I mean, this has been such, of all the years I've been here, I came here in 1987, this has been the most fun summer of baseball because the team has been good. Team's been hot. Team has won unbelievable games in comeback fashion. Anybody in that batting order can hurt you. And now they got pitching. This collectively is as good a pitching staff I think we've seen in a long period of time. You know, going back to the Kevin Brown era and the Hitchcock era way back in the past World Series teams. But no, Callum is correct. I mean, Petco Park, it's just electric.
It was a great series. And the fact that Padres won 2 out of 3, could have won all 3 of them. But what's your take? Like, I know your one man's opinion column, you were getting on the umpires and all the controversy, you know, with Altuve taking his shoe off. He looked like a hobbit out there from Lord of the Rings. I mean, what's your take on all that, all the drama from that Tuesday game?
Umpiring was incompetent. It was inconsistent. You know, and I just kind of lost my mind. I wrote a one man's opinion column about the men in blue giving baseball a black eye. I think the umpiring, as it relates to rules interpretations and all the delays with instant replays and then the extended arguments, and that doesn't include the moving strike zone and all that other crapola that we deal with on a regular basis. Umpiring is so out of control, and if there's no consistency in the umpiring, if they bring the robo-umping with computers, then I don't want to hear any bitching because the umps have been so erratic and so poor. But I mean, first of all, it was a full moon, right?
Okay.
That night was a full moon, and it became a bizarre baseball game.
Here's the voodoo.
Yeah, with all the antics, and Altuve taking his shoe off and a sock off to show the ump, and the umpire looks down, and then he throws him out of the game. And holy cow, it just was nonstop.
One of the weird things in that game was the so-called hit by pitch of Profar.
Yeah,
because he wasn't hit, and both benches were angry about it, which was funny because I think Profar wanted to get that game-winning knock.
Sure.
But, you know, that game, you know, Machado and Tatis struck out and they had the opportunity to win all 3. But you got to give credit, man, back to back to back with Tatis, Manny, and Donovan Solano. This is good vibes right now. And imagine what Petco is going to be like. It's going to be great.
At this time of the year, there's only 2 things that are important. Are you hot?
Mm-hmm.
Are you healthy?
Okay.
And Padres, yes. Check off both boxes right now.
Yeah. Dodgers, sort of, and no.
Exactly. Callum, thanks for joining us on Fans Forum. Next one.
Okay, let's go to Javi. And he says, Padres better not hope they play the Mets on the wild card.
Well, the Mets are rolling. I think the Mets have now won, I want to say 16 of their last 21. You know, I look at the Mets lineup and it doesn't scare you, except they got guys who put the ball in play and they got a couple guys who can pop some home runs. And I look at the Mets rotation and I say, how the hell can they be red hot and forging their way into the playoffs with a pitching staff that does not have Kodai Senga? He's hardly pitched at all because of the calf and elbow problems. And he's the ace. How can you be that hot with Jose Quintana and some of these other guys? But the Mets have earned it. Carlos Mendoza has pushed a lot of the right buttons. And yeah, Mets are kind of dangerous right now. But, you know, if they get into the last wild card spot because they're in this chokehold fight with Atlanta for the final slot, they have to play all the games on the road. And that's tough. You won't be going to Citi Field. So that's a big issue. But they've earned it. I mean, because they dug out of a big hole very early in the season.
Sean Manaea is still pitching for them and having a good year, right?
Hell yes. And how's that possible?
That doesn't make any sense to me. You know, and they've got a lot of other guys that, you know about Alonso, you know about Lindor, but there's still a lot of other guys on the Mets you're just kind of scratching your head about.
Yeah, and every once in a while you pop up in a box score and Brandon Nemo's hit a game-winning 3-run home run. Who?
Yeah, Brandon Nemo, Finding Nemo. You know, so yeah, the Mets have been terrific. It'd be interesting because 2 years ago the Padres went to New York to play the Mets. Maybe it's going to be the other way around this year.
Well, Padres, the key to the Padres is if you can't finish first and catch the Dodgers. You know, I don't know if the Dodgers are going to crumble here, but I don't think so because they're playing the Rockies and the Marlins to finish this thing out before they get the Padres. But if the key then is the Padres to finish first, because that means home field in the wild card round, which is critical. And they're playing so well. at Petco Park right now. So the last week of the season is really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is what makes the sport great. Okay, this next question, we're going to put you on the spot here. This is from Yin, and she says, Lee, who you picking to win the WNBA championship?
Tell you what, the Connecticut Sun, they look so different than they looked early in the season. And Indiana Fever, I mean, what Caitlin Clark has done to, they were 3-10 at one point, and right now she looks like she could be not only Rookie of the Year, maybe MVP. But I think that what's going on in Connecticut is they just got so much firepower and they're playing so much better basketball now. And Chicago's been pretty good with their number one draft pick has played very well. I read something this morning. It was really strange. It was a condemnation of Magic Johnson and the people that own the LA Sparks. They just finished their season 7-32, and that was once proud team, won championships and all that with Candace Parker. 7-32, last worst record in the WNBA. So there's going to be some upheaval in Los Angeles with that franchise, but Connecticut looks really good. This has been just a mystical year. I mean, it started with all the attention on Caitlin Clark, but then if you read the storylines of other star players and how some of them have really emerged into complete players and made their teams complete basketball teams, WNBA arrow is pointed way up in terms of attendance and TV ratings, and I just think global interest.
Dude, you are amazing.
You're damn right. Sleeping brilliant is the correct term.
It's anyone could ask any sports question, and man, you're ready. You've got the data. You know who's trending, who's hot, who's not. I mean, for me, I'm looking at this question. If I was to answer the question honestly, I would probably say, or I will say, I don't know, because I'm learning more about the WNBA. I'll probably watch some of the playoff games and find a team to root for. But it's awesome how you follow everything.
I know what I know. I apologize in advance for being a pompous ass. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay, let's go here to Rob. Because Lee, is Mike Trout is moving to a corner outfield spot going to help him stay healthy? Or do you see him moving permanently to designated hitter next year?
Well, he's the one that put that topic up for discussion about I'm willing to do it. I'm not going to waive my no trade clause. I want to stay here. DH keeps him out of the line of fire getting hurt. And the fact that virtually all of his injuries have come while playing in the outfield. Whether that's catching a cleat in the turf and tearing up a knee or a calf injury or running into the fence and injuring a foot and an ankle. He's just had so many physical problems. So if he can be my DH and be Mike Trout, vintage Mike Trout, then you go find other players. But he's a unique guy. He does not want out.
Who are the Angels using as their designated hitter now? It's like, is there some guy that's just like all bat and can't field?
No, Rendon has played some DH because of injuries, and they just kind of rotate other guys around. They had the first baseman there for a while. It's just their lineup's a mishmash. They've got a couple of really good young kids. This kid, a young catcher, Logan O'Hoppe, hit with power, although he hits 220. Shortstop Zach Nito has hit with some power. Now he's kind of cooled off. He's played an awful lot of innings. He might be down on the 240s, 250s right now. Chanel, the first baseman. They had another first baseman on the way, although he's not hit for average in the minor leagues. They just don't have a complete roster, and then your roster, the rest of your roster is made up by journeyman guys and, the Brandon Drurys of the world and some of these other people. And then, as much as we like Moniak and Adele was a high number one pick, they're 205 hitters. You can't have a preponderance of those type guys or guys hitting 240 in your everyday lineup. So they got a lot of massive work to do in terms of player personnel.
Who are the big name free agents that are going to come on the board this year?
Well, it starts with Juan Soto and it ends with Juan Soto, but there are very few people who can bid on Juan Soto because of the agent. And then you got the opt-out guys. Your guy Blake Snell's going to opt out. Now Matt Chapman elected not to opt out. He's staying in Frisco. Cody Bellinger is going to opt out in Chicago. So, the Scott Boras roster will be really the marquee names to pay attention to.
Imagine if Soto went to the Angels. Wouldn't that be just weird?
I guess anything's weird. But if they wouldn't pay Ohtani, who is established and very credible and very popular, what makes you think they would pay to deal with Scott Boras, who Artie Moreno does not like?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be hard to believe it would happen, but you figure at some point the Angels and Artie Moreno are say, darn it, we need to make this team better and let's go for it. Let's go out and get the number one or the number two players in free agency.
But you didn't do it with Ohtani. So what makes you think he's going to do it for somebody else, including Boris's clients?
That whole franchise is just a mystery. It's a cluster. It doesn't make any sense.
All right. Nice to hear from you. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, let's go here to Carlos. Padres can beat the Dodgers. Go Padres. All we got to do is play good in the playoffs.
He's answering the question. Who's the better team right now? Who's the team that scares you the most? Padres, they're healthy and they're hot. The Dodgers are not.
No. And the playoffs are going to be great, but really we're in the playoffs right now. You know,
Sure.
I mean, you got to win every game going in. Now, I think it's reasonable to assume that the Padres will make the playoffs, probably the Diamondbacks, but do you think the Braves or the Mets are going to get that last chip
Atlanta
spot?
had so many guys hurt, and they're just running uphill, and they just can't put a hot streak together. And the Mets just have been relentless. I never thought this was possible with the Mets. In fact, I thought they were going to have a dreadful season. I looked at the pitching staff coming out of spring training in the grapefruit circuit, and I said, hell, you can't be in a pennant race with that starting pitching. Well, that starting pitching and their bullpen has gotten progressively better, or at least been more consistent. They've had virtually, outside of the Kodai Senga injury to their frontline starter, they've had no physical woes with their rotation. One of the few teams that I think has given the ball to virtually all their guys and have all made 30 starts this season. But so I think the Mets are probably going to wind up getting in, and they'll be that third wild card team.
The Grimace did it, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Grimace threw out the first pitch, and they've been good ever since. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Chris. And he says, sure, Padres coming together at the right time with contributions from everyone, but their success can be mostly attributed to the fact that Dr. Jack Kevorkian is heading the Dodgers medical staff these days. Kike Hernandez now trending to start game 2 in the postseason.
Oh, that just feel free to pile on those people on the disabled list. Although it's interesting because we did a commentary. I wrote a column about the Dodger way maybe 3 weeks ago at the height of this mess. Well, I went through a laundry list of all their pitchers who had surgeries. It was shocking. You know, as we sit here this afternoon, you have to refresh my memory. I can't recall all these numbers, but I think that the Dodgers have had 19 pitchers on the disabled list this season. Dodgers have had 12 starting pitchers on the disabled list. I think the Dodgers have right now, they've used 13 different starting pitchers this season. And virtually all their young guys have had some form of elbow or shoulder surgery. And like 4 or 5 of them have not really come back. And the ones that have come back, I'm a huge Walker Buehler fan. You never know every 5th day what kind of start you're going to get from him. They just sent Bobby Miller, who had a phenomenal August, September for them last year. They sent him and his 8.52 ERA back to Oklahoma City this morning. And now the bad news is Gavin Stone, who tried to throw a bullpen, has got more soreness in his shoulder. He's pitched over 140 innings. Had never thrown that many innings before. I mean, I'm just going through this list of all the marquee guys. If you had them in your rotation healthy, you'd say, hey, we're going deep in the playoffs. They don't have any of them now.
Well, you wouldn't have enough room on the roster if they were all heavy. I mean, you'd have like 9 or 10, solid starters. This is unbelievable. But, a lot of fans are saying, Hacksaw, you're just bashing the Dodgers. You hate the Dodgers. Why are you ripping them? This is an epidemic that's everywhere in baseball, not just LA.
But they're at the epicenter of it. They got more guys. Yes. Baseball has a severe problem with elbow surgeries and the demand that everybody throw triple figure miles per hour velocity. But the Dodgers lead the world in surgeries, et cetera. And yet, I'm not bagging on anybody. I'm just giving you the facts. And I went through it of all the pitchers who've been hurt. That's why I got to read my columns every day on my website. I just kind of do stuff. So 3 weeks after I wrote about the Dodger way not working, the LA Times did this great investigative piece. The Dodgers have used the disabled list 98 times in 3 years because of pitching injuries. Now, some of those guys have gone on the DL 3 or 4 times. That's 98
That's unbelievable.
times. Yeah. So it's just a crisis. And they're going to have to evaluate their demands on their pitchers, what they're teaching their pitchers. And then, last week, Walker Buehler, we talked about this on the podcast. Walker Buehler made the public comment, I understand what's gone on. They teach us max effort. We know that if we throw 100 or we throw the wide variety of pitches that are out there now for us to throw, we can be successful and we'll get a contract. And I'm doing it. And if I get hurt, so be it. I'm a pitcher. That's Walker Buehler's reaction to the Dodgers becoming the epicenter of all the elbow problems in baseball.
Is Ohtani going to throw this year?
He's thrown 6 bullpens. Now, that's the wild card conversation right now. Now, Ohtani said last night he has not had a conversation yet with Andrew Friedman nor Dave Roberts about actually pitching in postseason. But that rumor is out there. And if they pitched him, it would be probably 1 inning and there'd be a pitch limit. But he's throwing in the 6 bullpens. He's ramped it up to the point he's thrown 25 to 30 pitches, max effort in the bullpen. He's had no setbacks.
Well, that's better than Gavin Stone, I'll tell you.
Oh, tough time. So, hey, I'm not piling on the Dodgers nor the Padres. I'm just telling you this is what I observe from the information I have. Hey, you're better that you have the knowledge that I present. Now, you may not agree with the opinions. That's okay. Next question.
Let's go to El Duque. He goes, Artie Moreno gets lots of crap, but he spends money, unlike the Rockies owner.
Well, he spends money, but he's also spent it really, really badly. And Montfort is a different situation in Colorado. Now, I will say this. If you look at the everyday lineup of the Rockies, I mean, they force-fed their kids. That young shortstop, Ezekiel Tovar, that's a really good player. And Brendan Rodgers. And they've got probably 4 to 5 everyday guys that have now proven they can play at the major league level. And they still have the old dog and Charlie Blackmon. But they got to find pitching because they've been wiped out by elbow injuries. You know, Herman Marquez has not pitched in a year and a half, and he was the ace of the staff and got hurt again. And Kyle Freeland, who I thought was tremendously promising, he's pitching against the Dodgers this week, and he spent most of this year on the DL with forearm problems. They've got to find a way to get some more pitching in there. But they do have good young everyday players, but spend some money. To me, and that's the thing that really offends me, that's a great regional franchise. They drew $4 million back in the Matt Holliday era. And
didn't touch home plate
yet, and the Todd Helton era and all that. So that could be a phenomenal. I mean, you imagine if you draw 4 million fans from the Rocky Mountain region, the amount of money you'd make. So invest. And Dick Montfort has not done that. So, El Duque is kind of correct about the owner being cheap, and the owner's methodology doesn't work. But they do have young players, but they just got to get more pitching.
You know, it's interesting you say it could be a great regional franchise, kind of like the Cardinals,
Sure.
Because there's not a lot of other teams geographically to compete. So if they've got a good radio signal, TV, they could build a really nice fan base.
No, they proved it when they drew over 4 million for a couple of years during the Todd Helton era.
Exactly. But, Montfort spent money on Chris Bryant, and then look how that turned out.
He broke down.
Yeah, so they ended up spending money on the wrong guys. Remember, you was another pitcher that went there was Billy Swift. Remember that guy? Because I remember he was on the Giants.
He was in Seattle.
In Seattle, yeah.
And he was pretty good, and he broke down when he got there.
But I remember they were saying that, or they were questioning whether or not his stuff would work at the altitude, because a lot of times for pitchers, it just flattens out.
Yep. So tough place to play. You got a unique player. The signing of Bryant, who had done great things with the Cubs. He was the number 1 pick coming out of USD, and he hit for power and all that. And then he went to the Giants. That's the kind of guy, if he's healthy with power, that's the kind of guy you want in Colorado.
Oh, definitely.
Power. That's the kind of guy you want in Cincinnati. That's the kind of guy you want in Philadelphia. I mean, because they can put up big numbers, especially at home. But he's just been cursed. He's had so many injuries, and from calf to thumb to wrist, and now he's got a chronic back problem. In fact, I don't know if Chris Bryant's ever going to play again. I think they may eat the contract, collect the insurance policy, and just say, we tried and it didn't work.
Brutal. I mean, that guy has spent more time injured than on the field for the Rockies.
Next question, fans forum. Who else got something to say?
Let's go to Steve. He goes, what's your take on the Chargers so far? I like their start, but Herbert and the offense looks off a bit.
Well, they have 3 number 1 draft picks in the offensive front. I think the thing that surprises me is they have not pass blocked very well. Herbert's had a lot of pressure on him, and now he got dinged. I don't know that I played Justin Herbert this week in Pittsburgh. He hasn't practiced this week because he got crushed right at the end of the game in Carolina, in a game maybe he should not have been in the lineup at that point in time because they were blowing Carolina out. But the Bolts are running the ball really well. Of course, that was against the Raiders and a really substandard Carolina team. This is going to be big boy football Sunday at 10 a.m. against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because that Pittsburgh defense is really rugged. I just wouldn't play Justin Herbert this week. You got a whole football season ahead. I'd hate to have him have to be a pocket passer with the risk he get tagged again and get, re-injure that ankle or that leg. more. I went back and looked in slow motion at the video if he got hurt. I mean, I thought he might have broken his leg at the lower right above the ankle. He just got bent at such a really bad angle. So they look like they could be a pretty good team, but they still got to play some big boys next on the schedule. It starts this weekend because they get Kansas City after they play Pittsburgh.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Well, my bet is that Herbert will be out there. I mean, he's like a tough guy, right? He's going to play through pain, don't you think?
He has historically, but you don't want to get him hurt. You still got 14 more weeks after this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and then you got TJ Watt that wants to body slam him on the turf at well, not Three Rivers anymore. What is it, Heinz Field?
No, it's named after an insurance company, Acrisure.
Oh,
insurance now.
New sponsor.
Yeah, new sponsor last year.
All right.
John, you got to get out of the house more to understand all this important stuff.
I do. Okay, let's move on. Let's go here to Angel, and he wants to talk about the Rams. He goes, even without Kupp and Nuka, the Rams have a shot at an upset of the Niners, and the Niners not going to have McCaffrey or Debo.
No, I concur. But again, this is almost an all backup offensive line trying to protect Matthew Stafford. He took a lot of hits last week. I think he's been sacked 7 times in 2 weeks. And now you're playing Nick Bosa and the 49ers, and you're telling me, Angel, that they can protect Stafford? I don't know about that. And no, his top 2 receivers are gone. I mean, he's got journeyman backups. I just think this is going to be a very rugged weekend. And they've had so many injuries. I mean, now that they're at the point, as we talked about early in the podcast, they got a problem with how many guys they can put on IR because you can only bring 8 guys back. And they've got all these offensive linemen on injured reserve, and they got 3 of their top 4 DBs are on IR, and they're going to try to bring them all back once they finally get healthy. So now there's a limitation. It just last year they had no injuries. That was a byproduct of what turned out to be a 10-win season when everybody was projecting, myself included, they're going to have a lousy year last year and a rebuild. Instead, everybody was healthy. This year, they never got out of camp healthy, and now it's gotten even worse since.
You know, that backup running back for the 49ers has done very well so far.
Yeah, Mason.
Yeah, and so, filling in for McCaffrey, which is a big ask. But I saw a stack ranking of all the running backs and max yards, who has the most. Dobbins, number 1, but I think the Niners running back was number 3 or 4.
Yeah, exactly. He's done very well in his first 2 games. He came out of nowhere. I thought it was a 5th-round draft pick or something, but big and physical, and so far so good.
Where's the game going to be?
Is it Frisco or here?
I'm not sure.
I think it's here. I think it's in LA.
Okay.
I think it's going to be.
Well, the Chargers are on the road, so probably the Rams are at home.
Exactly.
Okay.
Next question.
Moving on. Let's go to Joey and talking Raiders. He goes, how's the Raider fan? I'm still feeling the effects of Josh McDaniels. I think Antonio Pierce has the team in the right direction, but getting rid of Derek Carr was clearly a mistake. Go Raiders.
Well, I think they felt they'd run the course with Derek Carr, and he was making a lot of money, and maybe they didn't see any more upside. And of course, they've gone through coaching changes all the time, which means philosophy changes, et cetera. And I like what they've done defensively. I think getting Christian Wilkins in that defensive tackle spot, I'm surprised Miami let him go, though that was a cap issue. You get Christian Wilkins with Max Crosby, and if they can never get the 2 right defensive ends healthy, led by Mal Kuntz, and their linebackers are pretty good, that's a very different personality defensively now. To me, they still have answers in the offensive front. They got a lot of young pieces there. And, at the beginning last week, I watched chunks of that game, and Gardner Minshew in the beginning had an interception, a fumble, and 3 sacks in the first 2 possessions, and they were losing. I think they were down 16-6. I said, oh, God, this is going to be awful. And then what they did is they kind of changed up the playbook, and they started to throw to the tight ends, and then they started to throw to Devontae Adams. And I said to myself, why have you waited 1.5 games into the schedule before you started to do this? If they had done that against the Chargers, they might have beaten the Bolts at that time because the defense had really throttled Justin Herbert. And then Dobbins kind of took over the game in the second half. But throw to Devontae, throw to the 2 tight ends, throw to the other wide receiver, Jacoby Myers. Now, they have, at this point, their running game is really negligible. Antonio Pierce stood up at a meeting and said, you guys are piss poor, pointing at the offensive line and the running backs because they haven't run the ball worth a lick at all. So, now they're going to cause problems for other defenses because can you defend both tight ends and both wideouts? Because I think they're going to commit to throw the ball a lot more. They're not there yet, and I'm not even sure you can still trust Minshew because he drives me crazy. He turns the ball over way too much, and that's just not here. That's historically. when he was in Jacksonville and Philadelphia and the other places he's been around the league.
Well, he's entertaining. I'll give him
Oh,
that. Yeah. But the Raiders, maybe they're going for the vertical game. Al Davis, right? You got
Yep.
all these receivers, wideouts. Now, what's your take on Antonio Pierce as a coach? Because he got a lot of crap from the game one when he he punted in Charger territory.
On a 4th and 1.
What was your opinion on that call?
I thought they should have gone for it. You're trying to get momentum. You're trying to stay in the game or climb back in the game. Just do it. I mean, when you're 4th and 1 in at the other guy's 40 and your defense has throttled Herbert, go for the first down. Go for the points. But at that point, they were settling more for field goals than they were for touchdowns. So it's easy to second guess a coach. You don't, he knows a little bit more about what guys are playing well on his offense and what guys are not playing well right now. Pierce gets him to play hard though, and he is mouthy. He is so polar opposite from the general manager Tom Telesco. It's absolutely amazing. At the end of the game in Baltimore, and that was a huge win for the Raiders. They have video that I saw of Pierce running down the tunnel from the field, and right at the door of the locker room is Tom Telesco, the general manager, former Charger general manager. And Tom Telesco is Harvard-educated type guy.
Yeah.
And Antonio Pierce is from Compton, street guy.
Okay.
And Pierce ran up and grabbed him and picked him up. And of course, Pierce played for Belichick and Parcells in the NFL. He's jumping up and down. I thought he was going to crush Telesco. He was so excited. So we'll see. They're 2 games into it. Let's just see as they go and what this turns out to be. Now they're playing Carolina this weekend. Boy, that so they should be 2-0 or 2-1 by the time we get to Sunday night.
Well, yeah, and then plus they're benching Bryce Young, right? So
yeah.
So this could be, maybe the Raiders might have a surprise year. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that'd be good for the NFL. As you would say, if the Raiders are doing well, the NFL is doing well.
Exactly. It's always good to have like a evil, the evil empire out there on the field.
And that fits their persona.
Okay, let's get a hockey comment in here. This is from XX Revolution. It says, Rogers Canada gets most of the ownership of Toronto sports, so the Leafs may go deep in the playoffs, but let's see.
Well, they have to do it. I mean, the salary, they have a salary cap in the NHL. The amount of money they pay their stars, the Austin Matthews, et cetera, is just phenomenal. Between Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, that's a phenomenal amount of money. Now, that means they can't pay other guys, their support forwards or their defensemen or their goaltenders, mega bucks. But it's time to win. They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. That's one of the richest, most tradition-laden teams in the National Hockey League. It's not like Rogers Communications, which owns majority control of the Maple Leafs and a whole bunch of other things. It's not like they can pour all the amount of money they want because there is a salary cap in the league. But their ability to get the right support guys around the stars, like a 60-goal scorer like Austin Matthews, just have not been able to do it. That's why I said the thing that just happened in Edmonton this week, where they brought in these 3 veterans who all scored goals, are all 34, 35, but those guys want to win a ring, and I think they can with McDavid and Draisaitl. And what you got now is guys who play on your 3rd and 4th line who can score goals, because usually your 3rd and 4th line are just checkers or young players. So Edmonton's taken a little bit different tack. Toronto has just not been able to get the level of their 3rd and 4th line guys to be consistent contributors, if that makes sense.
Well, when you think of the original 6, the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens have got to be at the top of that list, right?
Oh, they owned it. They invented the damn sport. But John, that's a few slap shots ago, pal.
I'd say.
That's in the 1950s, 1960s.
That's unbelievable. I mentioned this before, but I remember as a kid playing the hockey game with the stick.
Sure.
It's got like a glass ceiling, and you could go here and twist the arms, and the players would spin and hit the puck. And it was always the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs. I was going to say the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs. And so to me, those are like,
that's tradition.
That's blue blood hockey. And so it is amazing. It's been that long, and you're a Maple Leaf fan.
Yeah.
You've been suffering for a long time.
I have, in many more ways than one. Okay, a couple more here before we put a lid on this.
All right, let's go here to social media, get some people in. We got some good social media comments. We already did some Raiders stuff. Here, let's talk a little bit here. Oh, Tyreek Hill. This is always a good one. And this is from Alberto. He says, Lee, you probably have never in your life been physically assaulted by the police. Being a minority has been a victim firsthand of law enforcement over-the-top reactions. They should have issued the ticket and been on their way. Instead, they escalated the situation. Typical.
Well, at the end of the day, this story has really died down. At the end of the day, they're both to blame. Tyreek, you know, the whole tinted window thing, and then Tyreek having to be hauled out of the car, and then Tyreek kind of accusing them of manhandling them. They're beating the dog out of me. Well, he didn't get punched, etc. He got roughed up. The police, I thought, overreacted. But then again, you have to understand where we are as a society right now, that when you got guys dealing with tinted windows who don't cooperate with the request of the police officer, then all of a sudden the police have to evaluate, might this guy have a weapon? Might this guy roll this down? Might this guy fire a shot at me? Because that crap has happened. I thought they grossly overreacted once they got him out of the car and they found out who he was. He was an NFL player. I think there was no need for that. Now we found out since that the officer who hauled him out has been disciplined 7 times for over-aggressiveness. But then again, that's a police officer, and they know their business. They know what's happened to their fellow police officers and how guys have been assaulted, shot, wounded, killed. So, the worst thing I've seen was the George Floyd thing. I was so sick to my stomach that was allowed to happen. And, we had Ferguson, Missouri, and just all the other incidents. So I understand where Alberto is coming from in terms of police brutality and that. And I understand why Colin Kaepernick did what Colin Kaepernick did to try to draw attention to what they felt was really something wrong in America. Have we solved it? No. Are police officers still being killed in the line of duty? Yes. Do we have an enormous problem with guns in this country and mental illness on top of that? Yes. I wish I had a solution. I wish I had an answer. I don't, because nobody wants to hear what I have to say politically. But it's just a bad scenario. But Tyreek escalated it, and then he followed up 3 days in a row at press conferences by just making offhanded things. And what bothers me is we're not talking about somebody who's got a great track record as a, quote, person. Let's keep that in mind. He's done a lot of junk off the field that he's got himself in trouble for with the police. So they're both to blame. I hope it never happens again. And if that thing happens, solve it. Don't let it escalate along the way. That's one man's opinion.
One man's opinion. Well, clearly there was a lot of blame on both sides. In my opinion, the police definitely crossed the line. They had him down like face first on the pavement. Mm-hmm. And we, there's obviously, this is a big issue in society. But I'll tell you what, that's a battle. If you're being uncooperative with a cop, that's a battle you will never win. And so there's legitimate reasons to be upset with the police, but you're not going to win the battle right then. So I think it's in the best interest of the guy in the car is just to let the whole thing unfold and then fight the battle later in court.
Yep.
But it's unfortunate. I mean, it was a bad situation all around.
And it escalated and then it got worse days after. And when we found out at the end, the police officer through his lawyer tried to call to apologize and Tyreek wouldn't take the call.
It's grudge mode, these guys.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay, let's talk here a little bit of Pac-12, and this is from Noel, and he says, if they didn't give the old American their power status back with UConn winning the national championships in basketball and having schools like Memphis, Houston, and Cincinnati, plus with them having decent football teams like Memphis and Cincinnati making the playoffs, and UCF emerging, why would they give this pack any power status, especially now with more money being made with the 12-team playoff?
Well, because 12-team playoff is a huge thing for college football. However, having a significant presence on the West Coast and big TV markets in LA and San Francisco and Seattle is hugely important too from a network perspective. So that's why it's critical that you get the right teams to come into the rebuilt Pac-12. Don't let this become Mountain West 2.0. Nobody wants to see that, and that's not going to have any input. But it's also absurd to think that Memphis and Tulane belong in a West Coast conference, don't you think? Here's my proposal. Pac-12. Go to the Big 12 and say, tell you what, I'll make a trade. I'll let you take the geographic one. You take Memphis, you take Tulane. Just put them in your conference. You give me BYU. Let me take Air Force. And then so we have a Western Conference with recognizable names and following. And then the Big 12 can be the Big 12. Because to me, Tulane, West Coast, what's the hook there? That's as bad as Cal and Stanford going to the ACC. No?
Yeah, the Tulane one is just nonsense. But that's funny. I mean, thinking about conferences trading universities, I don't think it ever happened, but it's a fun thing to think about. When you look at the 12-team playoff, by the way, is going to be great. I can't wait for this, and I've been hammering for this for so long. Like, in my opinion, they need to open up, make it 16, 32 teams. I think that would be great for the sport, but I'm loving 12 this year.
Yeah, it'll be good. The question is, we know the conference champions get in. Are the rest of the field of 12 all going to come from the Southeastern Conference? Is that good for college football if it becomes the Southeastern Conference tournament? I mean, if you're going to have a 13-0 Boise State team or whatever, Coastal Carolina was 13-0 and didn't even get an invite last year. And now, granted, they wouldn't have held up in a playoff game against one of the superpowers, but how are we going to fill out the rest of the field on a fair standpoint to everybody? Or don't you care?
Well, no, I want the top teams to be in there, and I want the guys that, like the little schools that are having great seasons, to have them have a chance in this, because I love March Madness, and you'll get Power 5 schools and mid-majors, and those games can be really entertaining. And then suddenly mid-major programs like a Gonzaga become a national powerhouse. We could see more of this in football if they just kind of allow them to compete.
So you won't be upset if Dartmouth in the Ivy League goes 11-0 and gets an invite?
I will not be upset, because I'll say they deserve it, because we sure as hell know that in the championship game, was it last year or the year before? It was a can of whoop ass. Was it 63-7 or something like that?
Yeah, against TCU.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get that in the championship game, then why not bring in some other teams at the lower levels? I think it's good for the sport.
Okay. We're going to argue about this going on and on and on and on further.
Next
topic.
Okay, let's go here. Dodgers, Padres. This is from Sharky. It says Dodgers have been banged up, especially pitching, all year. So impossible to make a complete team. But the Padres have finally put a season together that should make the city proud. Baseball is weird. Anything can happen, but the Padres did good.
Oh, the Padres have grown so much. Early in the season, when I wrote a column about this looks like a house of cards, it's going to collapse, they were underachieving. I mean, it was the same thing we had last year. So, what was the argument? Look at the back of my baseball card.
Oh, yeah.
That's what Manny Machado told me. And I said, hey, a back of baseball card said you're the captain of a team that failed 2 years in a row. But at the end of the day, they got healthy. And, you just think of the acquisitions that A.J. Preller made. Where would they be had he not made the Dylan Cease trade? Where would they be had they not made the trade to get all the relievers at the deadline? Where would they be? Don't pull out the name Christian Bethancourt or some of these other guys. Where would they be had it not been with the arrival of Solano and the rental of Peralta? I mean, every move that he's made has had a direct impact, either from a starting rotation standpoint, an everyday player standpoint, or an off the bench standpoint. And now they're really healthy. So, to me, the Padres are the scariest team going to postseason play right now, because anybody can beat you on that 25 or 20. It'll be 26-man roster.
It's going to be great. And my wife and I always joke that, we just want to be alive, to have the Padres win the World Series at least once before we die. So maybe this is the year. But it's just going to be a fantastic postseason. Really looking forward to this.
53 sellouts right now. Just absolutely amazing how the community has just turned out. But they put a good product on the field. This is the end result.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Hey, listen.